Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees. Welcome to our morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we'll be reading from the 9th canto, chapter 15. We'll be reading verses 1 through 15, focusing on verse number 15. Before that, let's sing some Jai Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodhanandana Braja Ranjana Yashodhanandana Braja Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Kalashanji Sri Radhe Jaya Radha Govinda Sri Radhe Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We'll do these two verses together, both the Sanskrit and English. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devyam sarasvatim vyasam tato jayam udirayat. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer the respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead, Narayan, unto Narayan Narishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and to Sri Vyasadeva, the author. Nashtapreya Shabreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamha Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. By regular attendance on the classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome in the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service to the personality of Godhead, whose praise with transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Gandhamarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chaksuramritam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Hare Krishna. Okay, Canto 9, 15, 1. Let's go. We just had a wonderful recap by Drisaduna yesterday. So I think we can get right into the story of chapter 15. Hare Krishna. Jishnu does.
Shukadeva Goswami continued, O King Parikshit, from the womb of Urvashi, 6 sons were generated by Pururava. Their names were Ayu, Shrutayu, Satyayu, Raya, Vijaya, and Jaya.
The son of Shrutayu was Vasuman, the son of Satyayu, Shrutanjaya, the son of Raya, Eka, the son of Jaya, Amita, and son of Vijaya, Bhima. The son of Bhima was Kanchana, the son of Kanchana was Hotraka, the son of Hotraka was Jahnu, who drank all the water of the Ganges in one sip.
The son of Jahnu was Puru, the son of Puru was Balaka, the son of Balaka was Ajaka, and the son of Ajaka was Kusha. Kusha had 4 sons named Kushamba, Kushambu, Tanaya, Vasu, and Kushnaba. The son of Kushambu was Gadi.
King Gadhi had a daughter named Satyavati, whom a Brahmana sage named Richika requested from the king to be his wife. King Gadhi, however, regarded Richika as an unfit husband for his daughter, and therefore he told the Brahmana, "My dear sir, I belong to the dynasty of Kusha. Because we are aristocratic Kshatriyas, you have to give some dowry for my daughter. Therefore, bring at least 1,000 horses, each as brilliant as moonshine, and each having 1 black ear, whether right or left."
I think you thought this was an impossible task, huh?
When King Gadi made this demand, the great sage Richika could understand the king's mind. Therefore, he went to the demigod Varuna and brought from him 1,000 horses that Gadi had demanded. After delivering these horses, the sage married the king's beautiful daughter.
If you're determined enough, there's always a way.
Therefore, Richiki Muni's wife and mother-in-law, each desiring a son, requested the Muni to prepare an oblation. Thus Richiki Muni prepared 1 oblation for his wife with the Brahmana mantra and another for his mother-in-law with the Kshetra mantra. Then he went out to bathe.
Meanwhile, because Satyavati's mother thought that the oblation prepared for her daughter, Richika's wife, must be better, she asked her daughter for that oblation. Satyavati therefore gave her own oblation to her mother and ate her mother's oblation herself.
Oops.
When the great sage Richika returned home after bathing and understood what had happened in his absence, he said to his wife, Satyavati, "You have done a great wrong. Your son will be a fierce Kshatriya, able to punish everyone, and your brother will be a learned scholar in spiritual science."
Satyavati, however, pacified Richika Muni with peaceful words and requested that her son not be like a fierce Kshatriya. Richika Muni replied, "Then your grandson will be of a Kshatriya spirit." Thus, Jamadagni was born as a son of Satyavati.
He was not so happy, but her words pacified him.
Satyavati later became the sacred river Kasiki to purify the entire world, and her son Jamadagni married Renuka, the daughter of Renu. By the semen of Jamadagni, many sons headed by Vasuman were born from the womb of Renuka. The youngest of them was named Rama or Parasurama.
Hare Krishna.
Learned scholars accept this Parshuram as the celebrated incarnation of Vasudeva, who annihilated the dynasty of Kartavirya. Parshuram killed all the Kshatriyas on earth 21 times.
So 15 here is our focus verse. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. We'll go to the Sanskrit. Driptam Shatram Bhuvambaram Driptam Shatram Bhuvambaram Abramanyam Anidnyasyat Abramanyam Aninasyat Rajastamo Vritamaham Rajastamo Vritamaham Falgunapi Kriti Mahasi Falgunapi Kriti Mahasi Bolo Diptam Chatram Bhuvambaram Abramanyamani Nasyat Rajastamo Vritamahan Raguyapi Kritim Mahasi Driptam Shatram Bhuvambaram Abramanyamani Nasyat Rajastamo Vritam Hahang Algun Pikriti Mahasi. Anybody else? Driptam Shatram Bhuvambaram Abramanyamani Nasyat Rajastamo Vritamahang Falguni Apikriti Mahasi. Word for word together, please. Driptam, very proud. Shatram, the Kshatriyas, the ruling class. Bhuvaha, of the earth. Varam, burden. Abramanyam, sinful, not caring for the religious principles enunciated by the Brahmanas. Anyanyashat, drove away or annihilated. Raja, Tama, by the qualities of passion and ignorance. Vritam, covered. Ahan, he killed. Falguni, not very great. Api, although. Krite, committed. Amhamsi, an offense. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. When the royal dynasty, being excessively proud because of material modes of passion and ignorance, became irreligious and ceased to care for the laws enacted by the Brahmanas, Parshuram killed them. Although their offense was not very severe, he killed them to lessen the burden of the world. Please repeat. When the royal dynasty, being exclusively proud because of the material modes of passion and ignorance, became irreligious, and ceased to care for the laws enacted by the Brahmanas. Parshuram killed them, although their offense was not very severe. He killed them to lessen the burden of the world. Purport: the Kshatriyas, or the ruling class, must govern the world in accordance with the rules and regulations enacted by great Brahmanas and saintly persons. As soon as the ruling class becomes irresponsible in regard to the religious principles, it comes to a burden on the earth. As stated here, Rajastamo, Ritam, Varam, Abramanyam. When the ruling class is influenced by the lower modes of nature, namely ignorance and passion, it becomes a burden to the world, and must then be annihilated by superior power. We actually see from modern history that the monarchs have been abolished by various revolutions, but unfortunately the monarchs have been abolished to establish the supremacy of third-class and fourth-class men. Although monarchs, overpowered by the modes of passion and ignorance, have been abolished in the world, the inhabitants of the world are still unhappy. For although the qualities of the former monarchs were degraded by taints of ignorance, these monarchs have been replaced by men of the mercantile and worker class, whose qualities are even more degraded. When the government is actually guided by Brahmanas, or God-conscious men, then there can be real happiness for people. Therefore, in previous times when the ruling class was degraded to the modes of passion and ignorance, the Brahmanas, headed by such a Kshatriya-spirited Brahmana as Parshuram, killed them 21 consecutive times. In Kali Yuga, it is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Dashu Praishu Rajesu, the ruling class, Rajana, will be no better than plunderers, Dashus, because the third class and fourth class men will monopolize the affairs of the government. Ignoring the religious principles of the Brahmanical rules, the regulations, they will certainly try to plunder the riches of the citizens without consideration. As stated elsewhere in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Asmaskritya kriyahina rajastamasya vritaha rajaste bhaktasya shanti malecha rajanya rupanaha. Being unpurified, neglecting to discharge human duties properly, and being influenced by the modes of passion, rajas, and ignorance, tamas, unclean people, malechas, pose as members of the government, rajana rupana, will swallow the citizens, prajaste bhaktya shashanti, and instill another place. The Srimad Bhagavatam 12.278 says, Evram prajabir dustabir akrane kshitin mandale brahmavit chatra sundarnam yobali bhavita nirpaha rajahi labda rajanhir nirganir dasudharma bahi achinya dara dravina yashanti girikananam. Human society is naturally grouped into 4 divisions. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvanyam Mayam Shristam Guna Karma Vibhavyachaha. But if the system is neglected and the qualities of divisions of society are not considered, the results will be Brahmana Vit Kshatra Sudranam Yo Bali Bhavita Nripaha. The so-called caste system of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra will be meaningless. As a result, however, somehow or other becomes powerful will be the king or president, and thus the prajas or citizens will be so harassed they will give up hearth and home and will go to the forest, Yashanti Giri Kananam, to escape harassment of government officials who have no mercy and are addicted to the ways of plunderers. Therefore, the prajas, or the people in general, must take the Krishna consciousness movement, the Hare Krishna movement, which is the second incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kali Kali Nama Rupa Krishna Avatara. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has now appeared in the incarnation of his holy name. Therefore, when the prajas become Krishna conscious, they can then accept a good government and good society, a perfect life, and a liberation from the bondage of material existence. Wow. Whew. Hare Krishna. So last week, or the week before, the purport that also I spoke on was about the Varnashram Dharma, right? It was about Lord Ram and how even in the age of Treta Yuga, it became like Satya Yuga because of Lord Ram's wonderful governments, right? That Sri Prabhupada mentions in that purport that by Varnashram Dharma, the Satya Yuga can be, or the Golden Age can be reestablished on the premises of the Sankirtan movement, right? So I was thinking about how similarly we have some of these mentioned in this purport right here. But Srila Prabhupada specifically speaking about how the government of this age is unfit to rule because it's ruled by third and fourth class men. And specifically that the third and fourth class men have put those people into power, right? So we have a democracy, and so we have so many citizens voting to see who's going to be president, and of course they pick somebody who's going to benefit their sense gratification instead of benefit them in a way that there might be some austere situation that helps them grow in Krishna consciousness, right? And so I was thinking about how even nowadays we see devotees in our world having such difficulty about who's proper to rule and who's not, right? Is Trump? Is Kamala Harris? Should we be left? Should we be right? Should we be liberal? Should we be conservative? Should we be woke or should we be nationalists? And so we have so many different people preaching, in a sense, how to make this world a place that we should live in. So as devotees, how do we know who's speaking truth and who's not? Well, I thought that a nice experience we can talk about is on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, before leading up to it. Well, the first verses of Bhagavad Gita are Duryodhana speaking, right? And in this, Duryodhana is showing his master politics. He first comes up to Dronacharya, and he speaks to Dronacharya, and he says, look, now, if the king is going to address his army, usually he would go to the commander, right? Who is Bhishma, right? But he goes to Dronacharya. And he goes to Dronacharya because he wants to incite Dronacharya. He's not sure if he's on his team or not. He says, look, across from us is the people that you trained up. And now they're going to fight us. How does that make you feel? And knowing that the Kshatriya spirit would be that, look at how much I've given you, and now you're across from me, about to fight me. Duryodhana knew that this would fire up Dronacharya. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that this is the purpose of him talking to Dronacharya, is because he wants to shame him a little bit. You made this mistake. Now are you going to fix it by fighting hard? But then Drona is very expert, and he knows that he should address his army. But however, he's in front of Dronacharya. So now he wants to address Bhishma, and so instead he says in front of Dronacharya, he addresses Bhishma Dev in this very appreciative way, because he knew that first of all, he first of all addresses Dronacharya and says, then look at Bhishma. But he addresses Bhishma in this very polite, very appreciative way, in a way that he knew that Dronacharya would be pleased, but Bhishma Dev would also be pleased. And so he could see politics like this. He could find out how to address people properly. And so then he talks to Bhishma Dev, And he starts to fire up his army by talking about the other side and about how good the warriors are there, right? But then he noticed, wait a minute, if I'm talking too much about the other warriors, it might show that I'm fearful. And so then he starts talking about his own army. So Drona is very expert in politics. Matter of fact, if he was to run for president today, we would all vote for him. He's so amazing, the way he could get people to gamble and this and that. But because of bad association, Drona had all this capability, but it wasn't used properly, right? He could speak. As it says now in this day of Kali Yuga, that somebody who can speak very nicely will be appreciated. They'll be very good politicians. So we should look at this and say, okay, somebody who speaks nice, who presents themselves nicely, we don't necessarily just look at these things. We have to understand something deeper. We have to understand their motives. We have to understand what their association is and what their purpose in life is. And so, how do we, in our society, be able to differentiate this? How can we differentiate from people who are talking nice, acting nice, doing all the right things, and might not have the best of, what is it called? What am I word from? Intentions. Thank you. They might not have the best intentions. Well, we have to make sure that our foundation is very strong. So I grew up playing sports, and when you're young and you're playing sports, the kid that's a little bit taller, the kid that's a little bit faster, he's always the best. He's always the star, right? But as you grow older, everybody starts getting a little bit bigger. Everybody starts getting a little bit faster. And those differences can start to shrink, right? And then you get to the next level when you're going into high school or college. Even the people who can't make it get cut, right? They can't be on the team. So now you're with a bunch of people who are pretty even with you in ability, right? And then you take it one more step further and you happen to get to professional level, which a bunch of you are also professionals in your career. And then everybody's been trained up to a certain level or has a certain capability to be on that field, right? So what is it that keeps somebody focused or keeps them at the level higher than others or able to compete on that level when everybody else is the even playing field? And it's quite well known in sports that if your fundamentals are off, then you're going to get taken advantage of. People are very expert on seeing their opponent and seeing what little things they aren't doing right and how they can take advantage of it. So a person might be in what they call a slump. So you've been playing so good and all of a sudden you're off. You're not playing so well. And so the coach will take your film and look at, and they'll break it down by little fundamentals, the little things that make the biggest difference. And they'll go, oh, here, this is where your fundamental's off. You just fix this thing and everything will be fixed. So how do we take this to Krishna consciousness? Well, at first we're in Krishna consciousness. Krishna's so kind and the devotees are so kind, right? They're encouraging each other and the little mistakes don't matter. We're just so happy that you're here, right? But as you grow in Krishna consciousness, the fundamentals matter. It's not so much the devotees are taking advantage of you, but there's somebody else who will take advantage of you if your fundamentals are off. Who do you guys think that is? Maya. Yes. If your fundamentals off, Maya will look for your chink in your armor and she'll find a way to abuse you. So, We have this wonderful book in our Krishna consciousness movement. It's called The Nectar of Instructions. It's 11 verses. 11 verses. It takes 3 to 5 minutes to read. And Srila Rupa Goswami has given us that it will take somebody from the neophyte stage to a pure devotee. And just 11 instructions. Thankfully, we have Srila Prabhupada's commentary to be able to help us dive deeper into it. But we should look over things like the Nectar of Instruction and Bhagavad Gita and make sure that we're doing things consistently. I wanted to mention something. When you play sports, you practice before you play the game. And it's almost will drive you crazy how much you do the same thing over and over and over. Matter of fact, if you guys have kids that play sports, they'll probably tell you about how they don't like practice, right? Because they do the same thing over and over and over and over again. And it's done for that purpose. It's done for a purpose, and that when you get into the game, it's just automatic. So similarly in Krishna consciousness, we have our daily sadhana, the things that we do daily, and also we can read these books that are fundamentals to make sure that we aren't having a chink in our armor, that we're staying with what is on the ground, what we need to have to succeed. And then we have people that are coaches, right? We have the Shiksha Guru, we have the Diksha Guru, we have mentors. They can help us in coaching us when we're off on our fundamentals. These things, when we have a nice, strong fundamental and we start to grow in our Krishna consciousness, now we can start to differentiate or discern about different people's attitudes, motivations, and if they work for us. We shouldn't be so interested in judging others' motivations, determinations, if they're wrong or these are right, but more we should understand from our point of view what's good for our Krishna consciousness. Matter of fact, Srila Rupa Goswami says in the second or the third one, it might be the third instruction of Nectar, is we should do what's favorable for our Krishna consciousness, right? So, when we have strong fundamentals and we start to grow in our Krishna consciousness, we get more clear in who we are. As last week, the other week I was talking about our nature. We start to understand our nature and what our service is. And so we want to stick to the things that help us to encourage us in our service. So to devotees, we don't so much have to be concerned with things like what is the right president and what's the wrong president, whether I should be left or whether I should be right. We're more concerned with our Krishna consciousness and understanding our service and how to see things through that lens. And it becomes much clearer. For instance, Arjuna becomes unclear on the battlefield of Kurukshetra because at first he's sitting right next to Krishna and he's completely connected with Krishna in yoga, right? But then he looks outside and he sees this battlefield and he becomes bewildered. And he starts speaking so many reasons why the fight shouldn't happen. And so that's understood to be Arjuna's disconnection with Krishna consciousness. And he becomes disconnected in yoga, V-yoga. A-yoga? V-yoga. Either way, one of those. But then he turns back to Krishna and says, Krishna, I'm bewildered. I do not know what to do. Please tell me what to do. And this turns back into yoga, right? And Krishna, his connection with Krishna, Krishna speaks the Bhagavad Gita and straightens Arjuna out. So similarly, when we are too focused on external things, we can get disembobulated also. We can get distracted and we can begin disconnected with our yoga. It's okay. We have lessons we have to learn, right? Arjuna was spoken the Bhagavad Gita because we needed to hear the Bhagavad Gita. So similarly in our life, we're going to have times where we get disconnected, but if we know our fundamentals and how to connect back to Krishna, we can understand quickly how to get back on the right road. So last thing I was thinking about is in this way, we become very confident in Krishna. When we see these things, when we become disconnected and then we come back to our fundamentals and hear from the acharyas and we come connected with Krishna, our confidence grows. We see that we make mistakes, but when we jump back on the horse, when we get back on the bike, Krishna is so kind to us that we get back on. And he sees our sincerity. And we should understand that this Krishna consciousness movement, this facility we have, is being directed by Krishna. However, we each have our own individual story that we're playing out. And so we should know and get to understand what that story is and how to play our part. I'll give one example of something that I find interesting, is that Bhishma was such an amazing warrior. He's the captain of Duryodhana's army. He was so powerful. Bhishma was a Kshatriya who took the vow of celibacy. Okay? And so in this time and place in history was that Kshatriyas were married to Kshatriya women, and Kshatriya women were so beautiful. I mean, stunningly gorgeous. And to win, they could even take up more wives because there wasn't enough qualified men to marry women, that they would take on even more than one wife. And so he was in this dimension, or in this area where this activities were going on. People would marry several wives, most beautiful women, and still he was able to maintain a vow of celibacy, which basically none of the men nowadays in this situation could stay in this way. They would eventually say, I have to get married, But that's how powerful he was. He was so powerful that his father decided he wanted to marry a fisherwoman. And the father of the fisherwoman, when Bhishma's father went to him, he asked for his daughter in marriage. And the father said, and by the way, this is for a person who's a fisherman, and the king is asking for their daughter in marriage. This is like a big up. Like, this is like amazing. Like, you scored. You know what I mean? But her father says, okay, but your children have to be the king. Your children have to be king. And so Bhishma's father was pretty distraught about this, because he was so wanting to marry this woman. And Bhishma could see that his father was distraught. And so he went to actually find out what was the problem. And so he ends up finding out that this demand of his father was made. And so what does he do? He says to the father of the fisherwoman, he says, you know what? I want my father to be happy and to assure you that your children will be the king. I am taking a vow of celibacy. I won't have any kids. I don't care for the kingdom. Your kids will have the kingdom. And even then it was like, well, but wait a minute. What if the kids are going to be the king? And Bhishma says, you know what? I vow to always protect the king. So if you're concerned that I will switch my sides and this, I vow that I will always take care of the king. So this comes to why Bhishma is on the side of Duryodhana. He's on it because he took a vow to take care of the king all his life. And on the other side, the commander is Bhima. And Bhima, an amazing fighter, is even nothing compared to Bhishma Dev. You want to know how powerful Bhishma Dev was? Parshuram, who just in this story right here, he kills the Kshatriyas 21 times over. Do you know who beat Parshuram in a fight? Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev and Parshuram end up fighting, and for 21 days they fight. And at one point, Bhishma Dev has a chance to overcome Parshuram. But Vyasadeva looks at him and says, don't. He's a Brahmin. Don't kill him. And so Bhishma Dev refrains. So the point being here is that Bhishmadev is so powerful, such an amazing devotee. He's a Mahajan. But even him, when the war of Kurukshetra was on the battlefield, he was on the wrong side. But it was all because of Krishna's arrangement. However, we can understand through this story that Krishna's will never be stopped. So we can be on one side of right and one side of wrong, but Krishna's will should be never stopped. And so we should have this confidence that our Krishna consciousness, that we're going to find our right side, the right side of the battlefield. We're going to find the right side. And we're still going to play our part, whether we're Bhishma or Bhima or Drona or Arjun. We have our part to play, and we should understand clearly through the fundamentals about what that part is to play, and that will teach us how to have the right association, get the right instructions, and so we can have confidence in our Krishna consciousness. It takes courage to be Krishna conscious. But courage is not that there is no fear or no difficulties. Courage is that there's a presence that dwarfs that fear, that is stronger than that fear. And we want to be connected with that. And that's Krishna. So we can have courage to, that this world is a tough place. There's so many ridiculous things going on. But our courage is in our Krishna consciousness that can overcome this fear and help us to move forward. So we talked about that in this age, everything's messed up in the sense of our government and so many messed up things, right? We even have great politicians who can speak so nicely, like Drona on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, wonderful politician. And we might get confused about our part. Who should we help? Who should we vote for? Who should we encourage? Who should we speak about? Well, we learn this through our fundamentals. Our fundamentals in Krishna consciousness give our vision, give our perception about how to move about in Krishna consciousness. And we can be confident in our Krishna consciousness because even in the story of Bhishmadev, a valiant warrior that should overcome so many different things, Krishna's will was not stopped. And we should have the courage to be able to follow Krishna's will. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Hare Krishna. Yes. Kritika.
Thank you for the nice Thank you for the nice class. I was just wondering, you were talking about the fundamentals
Yes.
of Krishna consciousness.
Yes.
Do you want to elaborate on that, please?
So there was a third party that read all of our books. Can you imagine if you had that job? You're a third party. You're not into being Krishna consciousness, and you read all of the devotees' books. I wonder what that experience was. And so they came out with a study, and they said that of all the books in Krishna consciousness, Nectar of Instruction, it best describes what we do, who we are. And so when you read Nectar of Instruction, it gives us the do's and the don'ts of the fundamentals that we build upon. For instance, the first one is, the instruction is that our tongue, belly, and genitals, we should control these. We should control the mind, the urges of the mind, the urges of the tongue, and and anger. And Sri Rupa Goswami says, if we can just control these 6 things, we're qualified to make disciples all over the world. That's the first instruction. And he's telling us how to become so powerful that we can make disciples all over the world. Of course, as devotees, we're not so interested in followers and stuff like that, but we are interested in preaching Krishna consciousness and helping people to come to Krishna. So if we read this Nectar of Instruction, it grows next to the do's and don'ts of Krishna consciousness. And then it starts to teach us about the different levels of devotees. Then it teaches us about how do we treat the different levels of devotees. Then it teaches us who we should look for in a spiritual master. And then it goes into how do we see devotional service and the holy Dham and where we're at, where our location is. It talks about that Mathura is higher than even Goloka Vrindavan because Krishna appeared there. And of that, the Govardhan Hill is most important because Krishna played there. And then it talks about Radhakund because even on Govardhan, Radhakund is the most dear to Krishna. And then he goes to explain that of all the devotees, Radharani is the best. So what I'm speaking about in fundamentals is that we should understand how to control our senses, how to know what the do's and don'ts of Krishna consciousness, because if we get too far out there and we're not doing these simple things that are difficult, by the way. I mean, when we're talking about like controlling the tongue, that's a whole master class, and it's that's 40 years of devotional service right there. Matter of fact, Srila Prabhupada says in that purport, he says you'll notice that the tongue in the line is the first thing. And so he talks about how the tongue is the first thing we should learn to control. So what are we talking about? When we do japa walks around the temple, are we talking about this and that? Are we doing our japa? Are we talking about the things that are for Krishna's service? Anyways, not that we're here to judge and stuff like that, but these are things that Maya looks for to be able to hook into us, and she'll take it and spin it. So we can become very good in our fundamentals so that when we progress in our Krishna consciousness, we don't get shooken. We don't get taken off. We can be aware of it too if we're very strong in our, wait a minute, how am I doing with, how I'm associating with people? How am I doing with these different easy things, our simple things, our foundational things, so that make sure that we're very strong. What do you think? Battery's out? Oh. Oh no. Oh, there we go. You gotta bang it like Jishnu. Or yeah.
Thank you for telling that. Yeah, I think I need to read that book.
It's a necessary for every devotee. It's so small, so powerful. I encourage each person to read it. It's also known for the book of sannyasis, but anyways, don't get too worried about it. It's the fundamentals. Hare Krishna. Bhagavad Gita's are fundamentals too, Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Hi Krishna Prabhu. I was also appreciating the fact about going back to our fundamentals. And the point that struck me here was that you made the reference to the chapters before when we were reading about Lord Ramchandra. And I really appreciate this purport where it ends. So we'd seen that in Lord Ramchandra's rule, because of how pious and he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of his potency, there was good rule, and just because Lord Ramchandra was ruler, there was so much piety, and I can't remember the descriptions of every place was beautiful, and just because Lord Ramchandra was ruling. And then this is the exact opposite, I could call it the exact opposite in a way, because here Prabhupada is saying, therefore when the Braja becomes Krishna conscious, they can expect a good government. So the responsibility of good governance in this example is shifting from a good leader to good Braja. So the power is in our hands. if Krishna is not coming to rule and rule us like Lord Ramchandra, what we can do is become more Krishna conscious and spread Krishna consciousness, and then we can expect a good governance, good society, and a perfect life, and liberate from the bondage of material existence. So I was really appreciating this point in this purport.
It's interesting that when I was giving, I was kind of seeing the connections too, and so that's why I kind of brought it up, or that's why I brought it up. And I mentioned in that last we all have our battlefield of Kurukshetra. It's either at the office or at the kitchen at home or this or that place, you know what I mean? We all have our battlefield at the dentist's office, right? We all have our battlefield. And so how do we fight that? Well, we do it with yoga, stay with Krishna, right? Because if we get too much involved in the external things of our battlefield, like who's across on the other side, who's the enemy, what are the politics, what are these things of the politics of the office or the politics of the temple, this and that, then we can become disconnected, right? But then if we go to the fundamentals, they bring us right back and, oh yeah, I do have some level of control of my own personal experience and my personal war field. And I see Krishna's there with me. Wow. I don't get too overwhelmed by the external things, which can become very overwhelming quick, right? I like how you guys are swaying together. I was just,
Hi, Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I had a question, but also I was a little, I wanted to check on something, because you had said that Mathura is higher than Goloka Vrindavan. So I was just curious, because I know in the verse it says Vaikunta Janitova Mathura.
Oh, that I might have made a mistake there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And then I wanted to ask, because kind of currently the world situation, Prabhupada talks about how the so-called Kshatriyas, the rulers, are thieves. And I heard in a lecture the other day that first there was monarchy and then there's democracy. And then when democracy fails, dictatorship will come. And just like checking in on the news every now and then, like, it talks about how AI, it takes 15 bottles of water to cool the systems when you ask ChatGPT or Grok or any of these things one question. And, they're taking over whole, forests and rural areas to build these data centers. Yeah. And then
just asking ChatGPT, please, costs so much water. Anyways.
Yeah. And also, I was just seeing, like, in UK, they're doing, like, digital ID. And, they could, take away your ID or something, hypothetically. So it seems like the world is kind of advancing in this rate of, like what Prabhupada is saying, and it can be a source of anxiety for a devotee. Do we watch it happen? Do we, wait for, a miracle to happen from Lord Chaitanya? How do we interact when we see that the world is just advancing so quick with this new technology, with these leaders which are so wealthy that they can kind of do anything?
Yeah. In this line of question, Srila Prabhupada says in this purport, here it is right here. As a result, however, somehow or other becomes powerful will be the king and the president, and thus the Braja or citizens will be so harassed that they will give up hearth and home and will go to the forest. I was like, that's a prediction by Srila Prabhupada. Yeah. I was like, it seems to me, so we're a community, and usually on the Vyasa Sun we try to speak about just Shastra, right? Being a community, and we talk about things and stuff like that. I'm going to go a little bit here. It seems to me that Srila Prabhupada has said enough things that we're going to be pushed out of eventually we're going to have to go to the forest. We're going to have to go to our villages. We're going to have to be, stuff's going to get shaken up enough where we're like, let's go. We got to get out of here, Anyways, so So that can be, so a devotee like myself and maybe some others can see that, and we're thinking, we have a little bit of fear, right? Oh, like, how's that going to happen? What do I need to do to get ready? And I think that this is kind of where I was kind of bringing what I was saying is if we just stick with the fundamentals and we stick with our Krishna consciousness and doing what we can do now, we can see, it will become clear how we have to move and how we have to move within our society and do these things. So, not that we shouldn't use our intelligence, and there are some devotees that have bought property and stuff like that, but we really need to make sure that we're strong in our fundamentals so that we aren't on the wrong side of history, in the sense of just not acting on our Krishna consciousness and moving forward. One second. Let me check. What specifically was your question? In case I get
what should a devotee do when they see that all these things are advancing so far, so fast?
For a second I was worried that I got too far. So some devotees will be in AI and will be these things, and so they'll be, part of their career is to concentrate on these things. So this is the importance of Varnashram Dharma, to understand our nature. What is it that we need to work on so that we can become a strong devotee and help the people that we need to help? And through fundamentals and through we get clear on that, and then we move forward in how we preach, how we the company we keep, the association we bring. And we should have courage. I mentioned courage because this is kind of fearful, right? But we have courage because Krishna will surely take care of us, and that's part of the process. So I don't have a exact answer in the sense of like how we should see AI or this or that. I mean, I have my own beliefs, but I already talked about that enough. But most important is our fundamentals of Krishna consciousness, doing the things that we need to do each day, becoming really strong and fixed up in our Krishna consciousness. So when the time comes and Krishna calls on us, like I said, I play sports and stuff. There's a time where the coach calls on the player and says, it's your time to go play. Time for your turn to play center field. That time may come for us. That Krishna calls and says, yes, I've gotten you ready. Now it's your time to help in this way or that way. What do you think?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the reminder. I remember a devotee was saying to me a few years ago, he was saying that that our generation of devotees is going to see challenges that no other generation has seen, because that's just how time works. And our armor will be Prabhupada's books, and our armor will be our chanting and things like that.
I've heard one train of thought that before a revolution, there needs to be somebody who stirs things up so much that the revolution gets pushed. And so anyways, I've heard some ideas that that's kind of a good role that Trump plays. He stirs things up so much and gets things so rowdied up that revolution can happen. And so so we could get, oh my gosh, if there's a revolution going to happen, this. That's outside of our field. There we go. That's outside of our field of Kurukshetra. However, it might be some people's. Some people might be studying like that. But that's the question. Is it your field? Is your Kurukshetra your battlefield? Is that outside of it, or is that within your field? Because like Arjuna goes to look across the field and he gets bewildered, right? Are we getting bewildered by looking at things that aren't really our duty? Arjuna's duty was to fight, not to determine if that person should be killed or this or that, or progeny would be, wouldn't have fathers. And anyways, all the problems that he talks about, Krishna basically says, those aren't your problem. Those aren't your problem. Those, I'll take care of those. You just fight for me. So we got to make sure that we stay focused on our battlefield. What's our Kurukshetra? Daniel, last question, and then we'll break. Last thought. Oh no. Here you go. It's probably, is it dead?
Hello.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Hare Krishna, thank you for teaching. I have a clarifying question and then a thought.
Okay.
So did you say that Prabhupada anticipated that we would be driven into the forest?
But it seems to me from the purport, Srila Prabhupada saying that this is a natural progression of society when you have bad rulers. So it seems to me like that's, again, by the way, don't take this as gospel or, you know what I mean? This is, when I saw this, I was thinking that this is Srila Prabhupada being a prophet. He can see that this is the way society is going. And when society goes like that, eventually people have to go to the forest because they're harassed by government.
That makes logical sense to me. I think that I would approach that practically. I think that there's a lot of encouragement in Krishna consciousness as far as I've seen about being practical and taking practical action, which is I really appreciate. And so my thoughts is I think that we could, as a community, focus on learning how to live in a forest. And that might sound really drastic, but there's actually little steps that we can take, such as like working together in a community garden and learning, teaching each other skills, trading out skills that we know. If one of us knows how to be a carpenter, one of us knows how to build houses, just getting together and like trading our skills and learning from each other would be so vital. And just like learning how to farm the land. And that just starts really in a community garden, which we have, by the way. If anyone needs help gardening, I'm around.
There you go. Pitch. Shalagram Prabhu must be happy. Yeah. Srila Prabhupada said our best preaching, or one of our best preaching, if not the best preaching, will be our farms, our farm communities. It seems, anyways, maybe not too far to say that devotees, maybe we're dragging our feet a little bit. Not all of us. By the way, there's some devotees doing some amazing work on farms, but we might be dragging our feet a little bit on our farm communities. And maybe society says, go do it. We'll see. Okay, dear devotees, thank you so much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Antikoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.